In Korea, your service and responsibility to your dead family member don't end with a funeral. Traditionally, you are supposed to perform memorial rituals several times a year, and the responsibility extends down to the fourth generation. Today, we are taking a look at Jesa, the memorial ritual for the dead family members in Korea. Memorial ritual for the dead ancestors existed in one form or the other from the ancient time, but the current form of ritual is largely based on the Confucius rituals from Joseon dynasty. Confucianism is not a religion but a social philosophy, and Confucius himself didn't care to discuss about spiritual issues. The memorial ritual was more a social occasion for the living, where the family clan reinforced their sense of root, family hierarchy, and the family bond. It wasn't as complicated and lavishing at the beginning, unless it was for the royal family or the social elite, but as the old social class system rapidly corrupted in the 19th century, the occasion began to be used as show-off of the prosperity and social standing of the family clan, and gradually settled into the current form. Jesa means the memorial ritual performed on the date of the deceased passed away. It usually takes place about the midnight. Charae means ritual performed on the major holidays such as the New Year's or Chuseok, and unlike Jesa, Charae can be performed for the collective members of the deceased family and usually takes place in the morning. Sungmyo means the ritual performed at the tomb. For the obvious logistical reasons, Sungmyo tends to be lighter in its preparation and format than Jesa or Charae. Here I'm just going to use memorial ritual to refer to all three occasions, as there is no concise expressions in English to distinguish each of them. Since one is supposed to offer the ritual for up to one's great-grandfather's generation, it could mean multiple number of rituals a year. Even though the memorial rituals doesn't directly imply spirituality, it has been widely perceived that the spirits of the dead ancestors or family members come around for the occasions of these rituals. They would feast on the offering served for the ritual and be ensured that they are properly remembered and served by the descendants. Even if one doesn't actually believe it per se, various rules and taboos surrounding the ritual already provide circumstantial evidence to the superstition, such as it taking place in the late hours when spirits are supposed to get active, or avoiding such ingredients as peach, chili, garlic, or adzuki beans, all traditionally known to be detested by spirits and ghosts. As you will see from the stories we are going to listen to today, failing to perform this responsibility properly would result in the spirits of your ancestors go hungry, or even in making them angry to the various bad lucks to the descendants. This superstition have definitely played its role for people to abide by this rather cumbersome ritual for a long time. The preparation of a full-blown memorial ritual is not straightforward. Food offering alone takes at least a dozen different dishes, including rice, soup, meat, several different kinds of fruit, vegetable, and cooked dishes, many of which are labor-intensive to prepare. Unlike in the past, when the family clan usually lived in the same town or region, nowadays it calls for them to travel a significant distance to participate and also to be prepared to stay into the late night. A table is set in front of a screen as the shrine for the occasion. A handwritten memorial plaque or a portrait of the deceased is set against the screen, and the food put in the ritual vessels are positioned on the table according to the rules. Right at the front are the incense burner and alcoholic drink, usually a distilled rice wine. The firstborn son of the family usually plays the leader of the ritual and starts with offering incense and drink. It is followed by the double bows. Double bow is for the dead, while a single bow is for the living, and further offering of drinks. During the ritual, spoon and chopsticks will be put on a bowl of rice and other food offerings to signify the spirit taking them. Depending on the family tradition, some would either turn away from the shrine or even leave the room empty for a few minutes so that the spirit could freely feast on the offerings. At the end of the ritual, the memorial plaque is burned, and the food and drinks are shared by the participants. Some would explain by sharing the food the spirits of the ancestor touched, the family members are sharing its blessings. The traditional memorial rituals have been criticized or rejected by Protestant church members. Protestant churches in Korea have its root in American evangelical churches, and they downright condemn the idea of offering to the dead ancestors as a form of idolatry. When only a part of family is a Protestant church member, it could lead to a family feud. Catholic Church in Korea tends to take comparatively more tolerant notion and accepts the ritual as the local tradition, but discourage the idea of spirits being present during the rituals. But the memorial rituals are gradually facing more and more controversy from the wider population over the past decade. As the lifestyle radically changes in modern Korea, such as falling marriage and birth rate, women's rights movement, and vast majority now choosing cremation, the ritual based on the culture of patriarchal extended family of the past is considered more and more cumbersome and outdated. I expect Jesa memorial rituals would become gradually irrelevant in the future Korea. But that doesn't mean the idea of the dead family members reaching out to the living and expecting to be remembered and served would die so easily. As you'll find in the 4 allegedly true stories about memorial rituals you are going to listen today. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. I lived in a small town as a child, a quiet residential town with nothing remarkable about it. As the usual fixture of such setting, there was a little corner shop, and it served as a meeting point for the townspeople. On the wide flat bench in front of the shop, the women from the neighborhood would gather round to spend late afternoon hours to peel onions, unshelled peas, and, of course, to chatter. Naturally, the owner of the shop, a middle-aged woman herself, knew absolutely every face and every event going on in the town. One muggy summer night, clock was about to hit 11 p.m., and the owner was about to lock up the shop, when... "Could you fetch a milk and some snack for us, please?" The owner was startled and looked around to find an old lady holding the hand of a 4-5-year-old looking boy. The lady had her white hair in a neat updo held with a hairpin and was in a clean traditional dress. Shop owner kindly invited them to have a sit on the bench and handed them some milk and cake, not expecting to get paid. They must have been very hungry and guzzled down the food offered. The owner realized that they were not familiar faces to her, which triggered her curiosity, so she asked, "You must be visiting somebody in the neighborhood?" "My son lives here. I came for the memorial ritual, but he did it at so early an hour in the evening, and I didn't get to eat anything. This snack shall help me on my journey back," the old lady said. Shop owner didn't say anything, but thought to herself what kind of son should be so stingy with a memorial ritual that had to have his old mother leave hungry back home. Meanwhile, the old lady and the boy finished her milk and cake and said thanks. They seemed to disappear instantly as soon as they stepped out, but it was in the dark of the night, so the shop owner didn't think too much of it. Next day, the neighborhood women gathered in front of the shop as usual. The shop owner remembered what had happened the night before and made a passing comment. "Don't younger people nowadays wait till midnight before they have their memorial ritual? What's the hurry?" Others asked her what was up, so she explained how an old lady and a young boy visited the shop. Her son finished the service early and must have cleared everything up, leaving the old lady starving. They practically devoured the milk and cake from my shop. I didn't even think to ask her to pay. I mean, what kind of people don't even prepare enough food for the memorial ritual? Suddenly, a newlywed young woman from the neighborhood asked, "Didn't the old lady had all white hair in an updo with a hairpin?" Her voice was shaking. "Yes, exactly. She was impeccably dressed, hair and all," shop owner said. The young woman was shaking now. "That old lady must be my mother-in-law. It was the memorial day for her yesterday." "What? But then, what about the young boy? He looked just like about 4. "Oh, did your husband have a brother?" said the shop owner. The young woman was now practically crying. "I think so. He had an older brother who died young. Oh God, what am I to do? We left them starved. What are we to do?" My father once went to see his debtor to collect his money back. The debtor pleaded to give him a bit more time. Father reluctantly agreed and was about to leave when the debtor's wife offered Dad to stay for a tea. Apparently the wife was a shaman. She asked if there wasn't an ancestor, a lady who had been missed out and forgot. Her spirit would have liked to get some offering, but was sad because none of the descendants would remember her. The shaman suggested the spirit would appreciate even a casual memorial ritual and would do him good. Dad could not think of any such person among dead ancestors, but Mom, taking the advice more seriously, asked around, and an aunt confirmed there could be one who had married into the family as the second wife. But having no children of her own, there was nobody who would offer her the memorial ritual. So my family started including her in our memorial ritual. Since then on, whenever my parents go to have their fortune told, they'll say there's a grandma spirit who's protecting my dad in a skirt. A couple of months ago, my second cousin passed away. I'm not in a good terms with my relatives, so only my mother and older brother attended the funeral. Since then, my brother started to suffer unusual fatigue and pain, which grew so serious he had to seek medical attention. But the doctor failed to diagnose anything. My brother was in a perfect health, he said, actually much better than the average considering he smokes and drinks a lot. Regardless, my brother suffered more and more, and he became bedridden, his face ashen like a person with a fatal illness. His wife got desperate and through Mom sought a shaman. Shaman's verdict was, well, I must say, grossly unfair. My late father was from a large family with 6 siblings. His uncle's family living across the village coincidentally also had 7 kids. They were not in good terms, and as the children grew and had their own children, it became naturally almost impossible to know each and every member of each side of the family. The 2 eldest of uncle's children were literally thugs, They made a whole lot of mess and noise when they found out my grandfather didn't leave an equal share of the inheritance, and downright refused to take a part in any memorial ritual and care of the generations of family tombs since then. So the responsibility was forced upon my dad and his siblings, and when he passed, subsequently to my brother, I, and our cousins. As mentioned, I don't get on with relatives, so I stopped participating in the rituals since 10 years ago, and my brother and cousins too have paid less and less attention to them in the recent years. Now, that's why what the shaman told us makes me practically angry. Among the family tombs is one that belongs to a son of my grand-uncle's, who died young while away from home. We didn't know and have ever seen him, but his tomb had been cared for by us up until I turned teens. But as my dad passed and the number of tombs and memorial rituals to take care of multiplied down the generations, it was subsequently neglected. And the spirit of the uncle came by to the funeral of the cousin and stuck himself to my brother and me. Apparently he is very angry for his tomb left neglected and actively doing us a harm. But why leave his direct descendants who have been doing absolutely nothing alone and instead bother us? My brother and his wife initially didn't want to believe it, but the shaman could tell where the tomb was and how its owner, the uncle, died, which nobody knew other than my eldest uncle. On top of that, as I myself too have been suffering some trouble at my pancreas since 2 months ago, we could not casually dismiss the shaman's claim. But the big ritual she suggested as a remedy costs us so much, we are still left undecided. I know not everybody would believe in ghosts, ancestors, spirits, etc., but all I want to say is, should there be an ancestor's tombs in your family, do take care of them well. Or, I strongly recommend cremation, clean and simple. My dad had 3 brothers. His oldest brother passed away when I was in my teens, and the youngest one passed away when I was even younger. So I don't remember his face apart from what I see from the old family photos. Even from the photos, it is clear that he had a trouble with one leg. Dad told me he had a serious accident at 15. Despite all the treatment, the wounded leg stopped growing, which resulted in him limping. He committed suicide after his long-term girlfriend deserted him. My mom would recount my dad had a really hard time accepting his brother's death, who always had a tender spot for his little brother due to his disability. After a long period of grief, my dad came up with an idea to arrange a soul's wedding for his younger brother, who died a bachelor. But the other brothers were reluctant to chip in, and my dad alone paid for the whole arrangement. On top of that, he also took it upon himself to offer the memorial ritual for him too. One day, when I was about late teens, my mom took me to a shaman for some issues I won't disclose here. As we walked in her room, the shaman said that somebody came along with us. Seeing us confused, she described the person with longish wavy hair and limping leg. Might he be a dead relative? We were of course very surprised, as she was clearly describing my dead uncle. Apparently he had something to tell us, the shaman said. Every year when my mother prepared food to offer for the memorial service, my dad would comment that she'd prepared too much and there was no need. You see, He was an old-fashioned man who couldn't really express his emotions, and that half-hearted fret was actually his dry way of saying thank you to Mom. But the dead uncle had heard what his brother should say, which made him self-conscious to enjoy the annual feast. He also expressed gratitude for the soul's wedding and the memorial service. The shaman added, after the uncle passed away, my dad would have ruined himself with the grief and heavy drinking. But the dead uncle had played his guardian angel. Whenever Dad would want to go to a bar, Uncle had coaxed him not to and guided him back to the family. When Mom told Dad what the shaman had told us, he broke into tears, even though he was usually opposed to the idea of shamans. Now that my dad also passed away, I want to believe that he has reunited with his brother. And whenever I prepare the memorial ritual for them, I'd like to think that they are present there with us. Hi, it's Anthony again, and thank you very much for your listening. This was the final of the 4-part mini-series, which took a look at how the death is perceived in cultural and spiritual aspect in Korea. Since I have focused more on the mysterious or scary stories, of course, I fear some may think Korea is a very superstitious country. But just as a concept and imageries of heaven and hell, for example, is still very much the fundamental part of the culture in, by now, largely non-Christian European countries, these concepts and superstitions are relevant in modern Korea because they form the basis of its culture and psyche, not because majority of Koreans are still believing them in the literal sense. I hope you enjoyed them. Those concepts will pop out frequently in the future stories too, so if you missed the previous episodes, do check them out. Links in the description. If you're enjoying my work, I would very much appreciate your likes, subscriptions, and comments. They will really help this new channel grow and encourage me to carry on. So, I'll come back with something different for the next episode. Until then, stay safe and take care.